to our webinar on consumer trends in the post-COVID-19 world that we're hopefully going to get to one day. I think we'll just give it a few minutes, just about 2 minutes for everybody to log into the system, and we'll get started. All right, well, good morning, everyone. My name is Glenn Manzik. I'm President and CEO of the Thompson Okanagan Tourism Association, and I welcome you to the next in our series of webinars as part of our BC Tourism Resiliency program. Today's webinar is on the consumer trends that is happening post-pandemic, and we hope that we get to the other end of that sooner than later. And we have a very insightful presentation today and this morning to share with you on what we're seeing out there as potential trends to consider in our business activities. I'm joined today by my colleagues at Thompson Okanagan Tourism, Ryan Scott and Darnell St. Pierre, who will be managing the communication on our web, Zoom, and Facebook live streams. And before we start, I would respectfully like to acknowledge that I'm joining you today from the unceded ancestral territory of the traditional territory of the Syilx people. And it's truly an honor to be here to do that. This webinar was created in partnership with the BC Tourism Resiliency Network, in partnership with the British Columbia tourism regions across British Columbia. And we're working across BC to support the survival of BC tourism businesses affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. The BC Tourism Resiliency Network is funded in partnership with the Ministry of Tourism, Arts and Culture, the Island Coastal Economic Trust, and Western Economic Diversification. And so we thank those partners for financially supporting our efforts. Our webinar subject today has been created in partnership with Rochelle Turner, who is Head of Research and Insight of MaCher. And this webinar will include content covering some insightful information around consumer trends, post-pandemic activities presented by Rochelle, followed by questions and answers at the end of the presentation. So please engage in the chat feature at the bottom of the screen to communicate with each other. We understand that these webinars, in some cases, provide some rare opportunities for our industry to have a chance to connect and communicate. So really encourage you to participate in that chat feature. And we do ask that all Q&A questions are posted in the Q&A section at the bottom of the box on Facebook or in the chat section. We will follow up at the end of the presentation with these questions to Rochelle. I have to say that it's truly an honor to introduce Rochelle. I've had the distinct pleasure over the last few years to really get to know her, and it's just been a true honor in terms of her leadership and in sustainability. And I'm sure you'll see that in the discussion that you're about to hear, and just a true inspiration. So Rochelle is the Head of Research and Insight for MaCher and a sustainable design firm. It's a B Corp and a signature and participant in the United Nations Global Impact. In her role, she uses business and academic insights to understand the motivations and dynamics of people and organizations, and applies research to help solve clients, businesses, and marketing challenges. Rochelle has spent her whole career conducting consumer, economic, market, and policy research within the tourism sector, and she has had senior roles in MORI, M-O-R-I, TUI, and which is UK's consumer organization, and most recently was VP of Research and Sustainability at the World Travel and Tourism Council. So without further delay, I'm very, very pleased and honored to pass the torch over to Rochelle, who will take you through the content for our webinar today. And so thank you very much, Rochelle, for being with us.
Thank you, Glenn, and thank you for that lovely intro, and thank you everybody for being here and listening so early in the morning. I'm actually based in the UK. I am Canadian, so I get a bit of kudos for that, but I'm based here in the UK, and so it's my evening. And so if you hear noises, it's the street coming to life, and if you see my background, as all of us, I'm sure, are working from home, and I'm cooped up in my daughter's bedroom while she's practicing Spanish downstairs. I just want to explain MaCher. It's a funny name, but we are a sustainable design and manufacturing company. So it's a bit strange then perhaps that I'm here talking to you about post-COVID trends and consumer trends, but we work so closely with brands and really help to get brands recognized and noticed, and in a way that helps do good in the world. So we are a B Corporation and a signatory of the UN Global Compact, and have won Best in the World Changemakers 2017 and 2018 as part of that. Any sort of destabilizing event, which of course COVID-19 is, it's so important to understand what are consumers thinking, what are people, what are citizens thinking, what is going to change, what is going to stay the same, and how is our world going to adapt to things that we have seen and things that we have done over this period of time. I don't have all the answers. I don't know anyone that does. I wish there were answers out there. What I've tried to do is bring together a lot of thinking from a lot of different places around the world, and bona fide quality research that really pinpoints some trends and insights that I think is really important that we all know and understand, and then can adapt to as we move forward during this time. MaCher has been around for over 35 years, and so we have seen a lot of ups and downs. And now, granted, we will not, and I don't think anyone will have seen a down as big as this one, but we always need to start with what is going on, what is the why, what is happening, that will then help us understand and help create a picture for the future. So why might things change? People are talking about change. This great reset is the words that we keep hearing about. But why might that happen? And we can look to sort of behavioral psychology, behaviors, and understand a little bit about why that might be the case. So in a pre-COVID world, about 45% of people's behaviors are repeated on a daily basis. We get up at roughly the same time, we have similar things for breakfast, we go about our daily lives, and about 45% of that just goes on and day on after day. About 66% or 66 days, according to other academic research, is the number of days it takes for simple habits to form. Now, we all know that for many of us, myself included, many of our lockdown periods have been beyond 66 days. And therefore, the 45% is likely to be far higher in terms of the behavior that's been repeated on a daily basis. That it's Groundhog Day again and again. We haven't had the stimulation, we haven't had the opportunities to go beyond our neighborhoods in some cases, or very few of us have actually gone to the places or done the things that we would have done on a pre-COVID world. So what that means then is that there is this opportunity for many of the things to have ingrained in us a sense that actually these are going to stick with us for a little bit longer. They might become habits, they might change, and the things that we're seeing now might stay. Now, of course, all of the data that I'm going to show you is new. This is all new stuff. This is all suggesting that there might be temporary changes in the world, and the data might be reflecting what we're seeing at this very moment, and it might not change for the longer term. And as I've done this presentation or similar presentations, I find new data, new information, and I'm constantly updating and finding things that might help understand whether behaviors, whether changes are going to continue. There are really bad things that have happened in this pandemic, and then the number of excess deaths is obviously just something that no one ever would have imagined. But we've also seen some hope and some new beginnings for a lot of people that the pandemic has brought. So eating healthier meals or doing more exercise. In the UK, we have an app called Couch to 5K, and it's been developed by the National Health Service. And over 1 million people have downloaded that app and have reached the 5K after sitting on the sofas for however knows long. So doing more exercise, cycling, the cycle hire, cycle purchases are up over 150% in certain places around the world. So we're knowing that people are doing more things. Spending quality time with family. Obviously, we know that divorces are up, but we also in China have seen that marriages are up as well, and people coming together and spend time and something that they're really enjoying. Dinner times where you may not have always been sitting together for dinner are some things that people say that they very much have enjoyed. We've also seen less pollution in some cases, and people hearing the birds tweet or seeing or thinking that they're seeing bluer skies than they did previously as the world shut down. And trying new activities, particularly among 16 to 24-year-olds. And those new activities might be things like crafting, it might be sewing, it might be doing puzzles, or it might be doing something else that they had not done before, learning the internet, shopping online, new things that are happening in our world. We also see, and I'll point to 4 long-term consumer trends that are being adopted. Now, these are not things that have just come about from COVID. These are things that have been ticking along for quite some time that I think have been amplified by the COVID pandemic. I'll touch on 4 of them. There may be far more around the world and in different parts of the world, of course, but these 4 I think are quite encompassing and probably will lend themselves to things that you have seen in your communities and in your homes and neighborhoods as well. The first is around considered consumption, and I'll go into each of these in a little bit more detail. I'll just talk to you about each of them right now. So considered consumption is about the sense of being happy living with less. And that then brings on a glorifying of frugality, accepting of things like thrifting and of sharing and borrowing. Now, of course, Airbnb and Uber and not owning things has been part of our lives for a great length of time already. But that has really just come to the fore again in the sense of this backlash on waste and this increased emphasis on sharing. And that lends itself to this second one around kindness and community. This sharing and helping that we've seen in our communities, particularly at the beginning of the pandemic, and the sense of how our local communities have really gained in importance for how we shop, what we do, where we go, and how we want to exist in our worlds in the future. The sense of fairness, honesty, and authenticity, again, something very much that has been part and parcel of the business world, of our governments, and just the general world around us for a bit of time already. This is around how the poor behavior of companies, of governments, of organizations is very much less tolerated than it used to be in the past. And that authentic and relevant efforts to make responsible companies is really what consumers are looking for. And then finally, what I'm calling reset and not rebound, this is all about building a resilience, and a real resilience, and that might come from a financial perspective, it might come from cleanliness and safety and security, it'll come from engaging in technology and building technological solutions that perhaps didn't exist before, and really building this resilience for the future that while recognizing that the previous world perhaps was not perfect. So if I go into each of them in turn, just briefly, you can see considered consumption. The data here from all around the world in 15 markets suggesting that actually people are looking for more sustainable choices. They are looking, perhaps because they were living at home more and eating out less, that they are limiting food waste. And interestingly, just reading today that in China, The Premier of China has just made an announcement that food waste is going to be one of the things that the government there tackles in the months ahead. That they have been suffering from drought, and they've been suffering from trade restrictions, and they've been noticing that actually there's been too much food wasted. So they've got a policy now where they say that if you're eating out with 5 people, you should eat or order 4 dishes. If you're eating out with 3 people, you should order 2 dishes, 1 dish less for your party in the restaurant, so that food is less food is wasted. But see here, making more sustainable choices and shopping more health consciously. All about this sense of considering the consumption that we're making. We've been seeing this trend to own fewer things has been increasing for a little while now. And you can see the further research around psychological research around happiness and what makes people happy is not in the owning of physical products, it's in the having of experiences, which is perfect for the travel and tourism industry. And it is something that is only going to grow in my opinion. Just in terms of some further data on this sense of the glorifying of frugality and making conscious choices, people are saving more money than before in certain places in the world. And I'll go into a bit of this in a bit more detail in a minute. We're also seeing that millennials and Gen Z in particular are making more sustainable choices, more sustainable retail practices. Americans, and I'm sure it's the same for Canadians and many others throughout the world, prioritize buying experiences over buying products. And again, something really important for the travel and tourism sector to make the most of those experiences when people do come back to being able to do it. A kindness in community. You know, we've seen all of these things. This is a picture here of my family celebrating my daughter's birthday, remote birthday party, and all her friends singing along to her and helping her to celebrate when they weren't able to see her in person. But clapping for our carers on a regular basis and recognizing that the carers and the frontline workers are people that we have to actually appreciate perhaps better than we ever had before. Been sharing seeds and growing vegetables, the singing in community choirs, or you know, the pictures out of Italy where we're singing on balconies and playing music on balconies, making masks for one another and shopping, and increasing hand washing and protecting others and buying locally. You can see here that across the world, people are saying that they're preferring to purchase more local products. Now, a lot of that might be because of a fear of safety and security and of cleanliness, but there is this sense of the local communities and the local people can actually help to provide people with things that they didn't have before. And moving into the kindness element, at the beginning, if you see the yellow line compared to the gray lines at the beginning in March, sorry, this is a complicated slide, I appreciate, but on the left-hand, my left, the March side of the screen anyway, the left-hand side, those lines were quite close together. That the yellow is about COVID was bringing us close together, that COVID was about celebrating that we were all in this together. And as time moved on, that yellow line has declined. And you can see that the yellow line is now far below the purple line, which is about driving us apart. And at the beginning, we were in this together. And as time's gone by and we've recognized that actually there are so many differences with the types of people that are being impacted by COVID far greater than other people. These divisions are happening in a way that recognizes and amplifies the inequalities in our society. That people of color are experiencing COVID at a far greater rate, that people who are in poverty are experiencing COVID at a far greater rate, that our society is not allowing this sense of equality in a way that people would want. And the policy decisions then that are being discussed as a result of this are very, very interesting. And we're seeing greater discussion about the need for universal health care and about bringing people up living wages. And this is happening all over the world, particularly at the moment in the US with the presidential debate, but all across Canada, all across Europe as well. New policy decisions that help merge those two and make that yellow go back above, bringing us closer together, being the thing that should be the thing that is most important about how we come out of this and how we want to come out of this for the future. In terms of fairness, authenticity, the behavioral data is showing that consumers will actually avoid brands that don't align with their values. And companies are now being forced in a spotlight, which has been described as being glass boxes, that there is no place for companies to hide. So whether people have mobile phones and they're taking video or photos of you, or whether they're tweeting, or whether they're taking pictures of the experience or the products that you're selling, there is no way, and that there, excuse me, there's no way for companies to hide behind things anymore. That Forbes has gone to the extent of ranking employers' responses to the pandemic, as have individuals. And this is just one that I found Lewis Cotter, who's gone around and looking at all of the different companies and how they've responded. And that the response is being penalized if it doesn't match up with what people are saying. And just a couple of examples, we saw what happened with the CrossFit CEO, and the CrossFit CEO tweeted some racist comments, and automatically brands that were associated with CrossFit decided they were not going to offer that product anymore. And obviously that's then meant that CrossFit has gone for sale and change of CEO. A couple of companies in Vancouver, the Vancouver Candle Company and Parallel 49 Brewing, obviously had similar situations. And what's happening with McDonald's and the former CEO there, all of these companies are being pulled to account in ways that just didn't happen before. I received this email the other day from Aeroplan, looking at how they are transforming their Aeroplan program and telling me about the new great ways that it might be a better program than it was before. And I hope very much that this is the case. Airlines are suffering incredibly. And for tourism, to come back, it really needs the airlines to help drive a sustainable future for people to be able to get to the places that they need to get to. If this is the case, that loyalty needs to be earned through trust. I really hope it is. It's a great airline and I love to travel with them. 41% of people believe, though, that only the products that they buy provide enough information on social health, safety, and environmental issues. People are looking for more. They want to see this information on the products and the services that they're buying. And here, I've mentioned it earlier, that 64% of people around the world said that they would be willing to boycott a brand solely due to its position on a social or political issue. So thinking about this resilience, this resetting and not rebounding, how are things going to be and what will our normal be in future? One school of thought is that around 60% of our life will be as we had it before, the back to normal, the traffic jams, the dentist appointments, everything the same as we had before. Around 20% will be things that quickly feel normal, that we will be walking down the streets and we will see empty places where shops or restaurants used to be, and we will accept that that's just the way things are. That we have groceries delivered online, that's just the way things are, or online school or online university. Also seeing working from home, which has increased incredibly. But about 20% of things will still not feel normal, and they may not feel normal for some time. That wearing of masks or having temperature checks or fearing others as well. And I don't know what it is like in the Thompson Okanagan region or other areas of BC, but here in the UK, I'll go for a walk and quite often people will turn their backs to me or hide in the bushes. I had a few people jump into the bushes, and I'm not that scary really, but this sense that we have to fear one another rather than going back to an ability to be social and shake hands and kiss and hug each other as we once did. Building resilience also comes in the shape of saving money. And it also comes in the sense of being digitally ready. 46% of people who previously never worked from home now plan to work from home more often in the future. And again, going back to that sort of discussion around equality and inequities, that only works really for certain types of people. For actually the people that are better off and have the digital capabilities and their job allows them to work from home. So again, separating out the haves and the have-nots is amplified in the sense of working from home. The US savings rate in May 2020 was 23.2%. In April, it was 32%. Go back to 2015, 2016, 2017, it was hovering around the 7%. Hovering around 7% for 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, and now shooting up to this. This is because people who have done quite well out of the COVID sense, if I can say it that way, are saving their money and not spending. And so in societies that rely on a consumer spending market, this is very, very detrimental to getting the economy back going again. And the UK is very much one of those that has suffered terribly from COVID from an economic perspective, because our economy is very much based on people going out and spending. Holistic wellness is something that has to be considered for the future. In 2017, 350 million people around the world were suffering from depression. And the World Health Organization estimated that depression would be the second biggest cause of disease by 2020. And this was obviously done pre-COVID. That was only second to heart disease. This sense that the world is suffering from a depression only amplified for COVID as we have locked down. But we are seeing this growth and this need for building holistic resilience, that people need to recognize that their health is just as important as their finances and just as important as their digital capabilities and the environment around them. 20 to 140% was the weekly growth since March in vitamins, minerals, and supplements, according to LEK. And I think this one is really interesting and sort of goes with the quote in the beautiful picture on the right-hand side, which is that we can't be individually well in a world that is unwell. That 71% of people think that in the long term, climate change is just as serious an issue as COVID. And this might be because there is this recognition that actually our devastation and impact that we've had on biodiversity and climate is something that is causing or has caused the disease in the first place, and it is certainly exacerbating it for different places around the world. But let's look to the positive. Fundamentally, there is so much that we miss. Seeing friends and family, going to restaurants, going on holidays, that is such a positive message for travel and tourism. We saw this week, actually, the MSC Cruise Lines is going to be offering cruise visits again in European waters. So people from the Schengen area, where you don't need to, it's all sort of part of the same European community, will be traveling on these cruise ships. We've seen other cruise ships that haven't done so well because they perhaps set off a little bit too quickly. But there is this sense that the market is starting to come back and will come back because people want it to. Connecting with friends and family is absolutely fundamental in this post-isolation world. Americans were asked, what was the one thing you would keep doing when self-isolation ends? And it's all about family time and connection with friends and family. So building tourism in a way that ensures and helps to facilitate this connectivity, this connection, is absolutely essential. I think seriously, and something interesting here as well about the one at the bottom here, 9%, more personal projects and learning. Again, a real opportunity for the travel and tourism sector. The one thing that they would like to keep doing when self-isolation ends, keeping up with learning and keeping up with these personal projects that they've been doing while they've been locked down. Huge opportunity for the industry to develop new experiences and new organizations, new companies that really take account of what people have been doing and help them amplify it in new places, particularly in the Okanagan. Overcoming fears, of course, is going to be a huge challenge to this. We've seen contagion and safety, and this is absolutely fundamental to what people are worried about. They will not go outside in many cases until they feel safe. And this comes about the whole industry. So you, as a hotelier or as a transport provider or as a tour operator, you can provide what you think is safe, and it might be absolutely perfect. But the weakest link in tourism is the fact that we are made up of so many other organizations that help build that product. And we all need to work together to ensure that every single element of that chain that builds someone's holiday aligns to those same safety standards, the same hygiene standards, to keep people feel that the entire experience that they have will be one that is safe and secure for them to complete. We're also seeing finances. In many of much of the world, finances are a huge issue, not for many who have done particularly well, as we've seen before in terms of the savings rate, but there are a lot of people who are worried about, well, what happens when the furlough or the government assistance ends? And that's coming up in the months ahead. And when it does, a lot of companies are already making noises about cutting jobs. So worries about, will I have a job? Will I be able to afford a holiday? Is something very much on the top of people's minds at the moment. And I think it's a third element in terms of a fear that is controlling people, is this lack of control and a lack of sense of freedom that builds an anxiety in terms of what people feel that they are able to do. Can I go in to this building without a mask? What happens if I don't have a mask? What if I left my mask in the car? What can I do? Can I shake hands? Do I not shake hands? I was actually having a holiday. I had a domestic UK holiday for the last 2 weeks. And one of the places I went to, I saw these two people being introduced, and they immediately went to shake hands with one another. And then the other people around them, it was fascinating to watch, but the other people around them recoiled and went, oh my gosh, you've just shaken hands. And the sense of, oh my goodness, what have I done, on the two people that did shake hands was almost heartbreaking. And this sense of, well, actually that's caused so much extra anxiety for them. So this real sense of what is open, what isn't open, and how do we behave is something that's going to be with us for some time. Now, it's not that fears were not with us before. And you can see here in terms of the light green. The light green shows that we all had fears prior to COVID. 5 years ago, the market average for 5 countries shows that there's a lot of just underlying fear across society. But the fact that COVID has come in has really amplified this sense overall of these different kinds of fears. And all the fears have increased as a result of this sense of COVID and some of the things that I've spoken to already. I think there is an opportunity, and this is where we need to be clever and we need to be agile and be as we know we are in the travel sector. That there are opportunities, and a number of companies are apocryphally known for building up when it was a downturn. Airbnb, Disney, Netflix have all done incredibly well to come out of a downturn in previous years. The products that make people feel safe, help them save money or learn new skills, save time and effort, provide enrichment, make their life healthy and comfortable, help them socialize and communicate, as we saw earlier, particularly with their friends and loved ones, and help people feel good about themselves. There will always be business opportunities to fill the needs that people have. When we talk at MaCher about tourism and talk to tourism businesses and the clients that we've got, we talk to them about the journey that they'll go through in terms of how much happiness people get in their travels. And so if you take a trip, the very beginning of when you would start to think of a trip to 2 or 3 weeks after you've come home and you've unpacked and you've shared your photos, we look at all of that and say, well, where does happiness come from? And some academics have looked at happiness on experiential trips, experiences. And the pre-element of a holiday actually generates about 55% of overall total happiness in a happiness experience. The on experience is about 15%, and post-trip, it's about 35%. And this is important in terms of when you are communicating, when you are marketing, when you are helping your clients to think and plan and get the most happiness from the experience that they will have with you. So we do a lot with our clients on this particular issue and the messaging and potentially the products that would come about as part of that. On the pre-stage, it's so important, particularly now, to spark inspiration, ideas, hope, and joy. We know that people are looking forward to traveling in the future, and it's getting those ideas to them and the sense that actually there is a future for them. It's just a few months away. We need to start slow and manage expectations. It might be 2 steps forward, but it also might be 1 step back. And by starting slow and managing these expectations, you're giving people that openness and transparency and saying to them, we don't have all the answers. We might make some mistakes. Things might change. Please bear with us. And people respect that and they appreciate that. And this importance of working collaboratively across the sector. We can't work in silos and in isolation. We all have to work together. I think also, and something for the industry as a whole to really think about is this real need to provide greater evidence and proof of tourism and of companies being a force for good and of having purpose and of doing good in the places that they are operating. We all know that tourism was not perfect before COVID, that there was waste, that there was pollution, that there was in some cases, in some parts of the world, people that were not treated properly in the jobs that they were doing. And this needs to change. We need to do more than just show the economic benefit of tourism. We need to do more to show why tourism in places can help create pride, can help protect areas, can help enhance the biodiversity, and can really be a force for good in places. On the trip, it's really important that, we're a hospitality industry, and hospitality stems from the hospice, which is all about making people comfortable, making people safe. And so having great hospitality and service, but if you're wearing masks and you're social distancing, it sort of goes against a lot of what we also knew in the past, against the smiles. How do you smile with a mask on? Against making friends. How do you make friends if you have to stand 6 feet apart? How do you do these things? And how do you build that sense of collaboration and conviviality when you are social distancing? And it's going to take a lot of work in some cases, but it certainly can be done. And I saw some great examples when I was, say, just traveling this last couple of weeks in the UK. Enhancing those experiences through respectful community engagement and greater authenticity and personalization. Personalization is going to be key, and digital will be certainly a way to help it there. The messaging, of course, being consistent throughout. And then the post-trip, I think this is really important, these reassurances and reminders. I saw some data today saying that about 30% of people say that one of the things putting them off traveling at the moment, in addition to the safety and security and hygiene, is a concern that their friends and family will not think it's the right thing for them to do. So providing these reassurances and reminders that actually by going away, and if you can link it to the pre-element of evidence of being a force for good, that by going away, you've actually done a good thing in the place that you went. You helped give people jobs. You've helped to, you've helped to create biodiversity. You've helped to open up your mind to new experiences. You've come back relaxed. You've done all the things that tourism can help do. Also, it's important, this sense of gathering and responding to traveler feedback and building brand trust through actionable and proactive and targeted communications. But engaging your customers in those decisions and helping them to be part of co-creating opportunities is something that many of them will be looking to do in the future. So let's start with the why, what, and how, not to paraphrase Simon Sinek in any way, but consider consumption. We know that this is a long-term trend. Why would someone choose your company? How is it delivering positive change, not just for consumers, but to citizens? And this sense of citizen rather than just consumers, that is something that is growing. The kindness in community. How can your company truly connect with local communities, services, people, and initiatives? In terms of fairness and authenticity, how is the mission of your company being communicated and participated in by everyone in your team? We all have to buy in, because your employees can be and need to be part of your mission, and building your mission has to be engaged in by everyone in your organization and then communicated elsewhere. And then resetting and not rebounding. There are so many ideas that we've seen just come about. I mean, there's so many ideas that people have said, oh, that'll take 18 months to deliver, and they've been delivered in weeks. Some of the changes, some of the digitalization, some of the operational changes. We've seen so much innovation in the last few months that we've all been locked down and had to think differently. How can we think differently? What really crazy, ridiculous ideas have your employees got, or your customers got, or have you got that might actually work and might actually help change and move your business in a way that will work for the future? So how do we continue? We know that COVID is this great revealer. It's this great revealer of so many different things. But as Dr. David Navarro said from the World Health Organization, a great revealer of so many inequities and inadequacies of the systems we have now. And we can do better. And we have this chance like never before to reconstruct and reimagine and be accountable. And it's so important, I think, that the tourism industry embraces that, takes it up, and we do amazing things going forward. So I'd just like to thank you all. I'm really interested in hearing your questions. And if you want any further information, I really look forward to having conversations. Thank you so much.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Rochelle, for that great presentation and information on this topic. We now have some time for Q&A, and we have had some great questions from the panelists watching. Would you like me to read them to you, Rochelle, or can you see that area on there?
I can see. So from Chelsea McGonigal, how can tourism businesses take advantage of these COVID consumer trends, short-term and long-term? I think, what we have on listening today, there are 77 people here who will all be having their own experiences. And I know that, Glenn, you've done some amazing things with your organization in sharing information about how you can take advantage of consumer trends. I mean, I think, we're a B Corp, and the answer for everyone is not become a B Corp, but the answer for all businesses, I believe, is to start taking advantage of some of the trends that I talked about today. And if they are not already part of your business, then to start questioning why they are not, because I think these are things that are starting to come if they're not already in your area. But these are things that people are looking at and looking to, and you will be judged on. So it might be about, taking a step back, asking people in ways that you've never asked them to question things before, and to start thinking about what you can do differently. Glenn, do you have any further thoughts on that?
No, I couldn't agree more. I mean, this is the time now to take stock in what we are doing as an organization and as a business and as an industry, so that we can weather the next storm that will come in front of us, but at the same time be more responsible to do that. And what we saw that came from this pandemic so far is to understand the social license within communities to do the business that we do, that we have to be more connected to our communities and show how we're improving not only the economics of the community, but the social, cultural, and environmental aspects of it as well. And then we can weather storms like this even further. And that's a big part of what we've been doing as a region and as a province, and want to continue to lead the way in that aspect.
There are a couple of questions around balancing the destination for tourism when the communities are not ready for that. I think that's probably one for you, Glenn, rather than for me.
Yeah, there's no question, Rochelle, and to those that are on, is that we do need to, as I mentioned just a few seconds ago, understand the position that residents have towards the industry and really respect that tourism is a privilege in these communities that we work in and not a right. And as long as if we come at it with that perspective, we'll be able to address the concerns that residents might have in a much more efficient and respectful way, in the times of uncertainty, but also in times of good times, when projects that tourism industry folks want to put together and present to the public and say, this is the kind of project we want to bring to your community, that the community understands why that project might be good for everyone in the community. There should be no downside to projects that come to an area, and this opportunity has allowed us to step back and really truly understand what that truly means. And that's and to what Rochelle is talking about, we need to come out of this better as an industry, and this is the opportunity to do that.
There's a question around how one would help build personal resilience, how you strengthen your mental health. And there will be, I think, I won't know all the answers or even admit to knowing any answers, because I think the answers come differently for different people. I personally feel that it's so important to take time out in nature, to go for a walk, to go into the forest. And there's a word for this in Japanese, which means forest bathing, that nature is very healing, actually. And even if it's a short walk, but as part of your daily life, to recognize how small we actually are. And I realize it's very difficult to do if you live in a city or if you live in a part of the world where, unfortunately, there isn't access to nature. But recognize that we are only a small part in the world, and that there are bigger things. I think also to have routine, and as part of that routine, to take up exercise, to talk to people, to engage in things that help you switch off from the noise of all of the horror around us. And it might be watching comedy, it might be not watching the news, it might be knitting. I don't know what it is, but it's something that helps you switch off from all of the horror that is out there. I think there probably are far better people to answer that, but those are the kinds of things that I might do. In terms of inequality, I think this is a really interesting question, and at the moment we are at MaCher, we're in the process of writing our annual sustainability report. And one of the things that we recertified, so we certified in 2014, and then again in 2016, and then again this year. And we jumped considerably this year. And one of the things that made us jump is that we give 2% of all of our turnover to charity. And that's great, and that's fine, but we took a hard look. So the company's based in LA, I'm in the UK, we're offices all over, and we took a hard look at, okay, well, that's great, but what are we doing with that 2%? And are we actually benefiting people like us by supporting charities that are fantastic charities, don't get me wrong, but are they doing something to help bridge that gap between the rich and the poor. So for example, we were doing some support for a cancer charity, which is great, but we live in a part of or our office is in a part of LA where there is tremendous homelessness. And I came on, and when I first went to the company, I was actually horrified. You know, I grew up in Canada, I live in the UK. There is a social net that doesn't exist in a lot of the United States. And I said, well, how are we allocating our funding and our money towards some of the people that might not be able to afford houses, never mind holidays or products? And so thinking about where you are addressing your philanthropy, how you are addressing your products. There was an announcement today with some of the big tech companies that they are going to offer 100,000 jobs to disadvantaged younger people in New York City. And they've taken on and said, right, that's what we're going to do. Jamie Oliver's company, they take on people that they wouldn't normally be able to get a job. There's a company called Kind Travel that I heard about today, which a proportion, I think it's 10% of the money that comes from your travel goes into supporting and creating holidays for other people that wouldn't otherwise be able to afford them. What is happening? And again, taking a step back and saying, what can I do? I can only make a small contribution, but how can I make sure that that contribution works? That's sort of what we're doing.
Thanks, Rochelle. I think we have time for just one more question here. So from your research and knowledge, do you anticipate the travel industry returning to the pre-COVID status quo or not? Very difficult question. But
it is such a difficult question. And, you know, I say, coming from the World Travel and Tourism Council, you know, the people that make up the WTTC, the members, are the big boys, you know, the big airlines, the big cruise lines, the big companies that have a lot of backing and investment in the status quo, in the pre-COVID status quo. At the same time, I see this real movement for change. And that movement for change from people not willing to accept just the old way. So yes, there will be cruises, and yes, there will be big hotels and airlines. I think it will be smaller, but I also think those companies will have to do far more than they have done in the past to prove their value to communities, to prove that they're offering the jobs that should be offered, and to be better companies than they were before. Maybe that's just a wish and a hope, but that's what I think will likely happen.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Rochelle, for that amazing presentation and that insight that you've shared with us all today. I'd like to thank everybody as well for joining us today. And in regards to the Resiliency program, if you'd like to receive more information on the program, please head to tourismresiliency.ca. You can sign up for the program there if you haven't already, by selecting the regional tourism partner at the top of the site. And if you have any specific questions around the webinar, I've noted there has been some in the chat, so please be assured I will make sure that they are covered off in some of the follow-up documents that we share. And as I just mentioned, watch your inbox because we'll be sharing the recording of this webinar plus that additional information that you're looking for. We do have some other webinars coming up in the future, and we'll be sharing them with you through email and our social channels. So please also keep a lookout for that as well. Before we leave, Glenn, did you want to add anything to the end there?
No, Rochelle, it just continues. The research that you showed me about 2 months ago has just been so much more augmented in this presentation here today. And we just very honored as a region and as a province to get your knowledge and your thoughts on this. And we look forward to working with you well into the future. And so thank you for taking your time out today and sharing this with us today.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you everyone for listening, and thank you for giving up your time on a busy day. Good luck to all of you. I hope the industry is starting to come back. I really hope it is. You really deserve it.
Well, we're getting there. We're getting there.
Good. Glad to hear.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great rest of your week.